ordinarily, I think as a club, Bayern are very reluctant to let him go, whether that's on loan or for a transfer, a permanent one. But because he's just not a factor at the moment, I guess the thinking was, okay, at least get him some game time. Maybe we get the Mathys Tel back in 6 months that we know has so much talent and so much potential. Maybe he needs that change of scenery to find his form again.
Let's focus on the transfer window in Germany now. Here are the notable incoming players to the Bundesliga this winter. Ian, who's caught your eye from that list?
I mean, Batshuayi's really caught my list. I mean, this is one that just happened today, and Galatasaray obviously making that type of a move. This is someone who's been in the Bundesliga before, but still can have a real impact for a club like Eintracht Frankfurt, who have just lost the goals of Omar Marmoush. So I'm really intrigued to see how he handles it alongside Ilay Wahi.
In terms of outgoings, you mentioned Marmoush there, the Premier League, the preferred destination for players leaving Germany. He signs from Frankfurt to Manchester City for $73 million, which is quite a lot of money. Daniel Marland going from Dortmund to Aston Villa as well. Let's speak to our German correspondent Raphael Honigstein for the latest on Mathys Tel, the big news today. Great to see you, Rafa. He seemed to reject Spurs, didn't he, on Friday? He said, no, I'm not going to North London. And now he's signed for them. Why the change of heart?
I think the terms of the deals have changed. Spurs came to...
Money.
Spurs, no, not so much that, but Spurs came to Bayern and said, we want to buy this guy. And he wasn't sure whether he should really trade Bayern for Spurs, but a loan keeps the options open, both for him if it goes really well, maybe he wants to stay. But of course, Bayern also have the option of then getting him the game time, and then maybe he wants to stay a little bit longer or move to a bigger club. I think Mathys Tel, because he started so well his Bayern career and was such an important player in a way, even though he was always, of course, a deputy to Lewandowski at the very end, I think, and of course now Harry Kane. He is a guy who sees himself as a player that belongs at the very top. And I think the pitch from Spurs, while attractive, and I understand that Ange Postecoglou really made an impact with it, what he told him, I don't think he was ready to say, okay, the next 3 or 4 years of my career, Spurs is the right place for me. So a loan just keeps his options open, and that's why it's happened.
How much of a miss is this for Bayern Munich, though? I mean, I'm understanding that, of course, for the player, he needs to play and wants to play first-team football. But at Bayern Munich, he was sort of a bit-part player. I know he scored some goals when he came off the bench, but will Bayern Munich really miss him?
They will miss him if he plays the way he has played this season, which has been disappointing. He has had almost no impact in terms of numbers, in terms of the energy. He started in 2 very big games, one away to Dortmund, where Bayern really struggled, and it was seen as a bit of a mistake starting him. And he started again just a few days ago against Slovan Bratislava, where Bayern really needed to score a lot of goals. And he again looked a little bit underwhelming. And I think Vincent Kompany, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to believe that he can play an important role at the moment. And ordinarily, I think as a club, Bayern are very reluctant to let him go, whether that's on loan or for a transfer, a permanent one. But because he's just not a factor at the moment, I guess the thinking was, okay, at least get him some game time. Maybe we get the Mathys Tel back in 6 months that we know has so much talent and so much potential. Maybe he needs that change of scenery to find his form again. So I think under the circumstances, it's probably a good move for everyone.
Hey, Rafa, we know that Bischoff was just announced, Urbig was just announced as well for Bayern Munich, obviously looking towards the future. Ibrahimovic has departed the club now, Tel has departed the club, and this morning it was announced that Manuel Neuer had signed an extension at the club. I mean, I guess, how would you rate this transfer window for Bayern Munich, and how important is it to lock Manuel Neuer down for a 1-year extension? I mean, are we going to see this guy play into his 40s?
Well, I think Manuel Neuer wants to play well beyond his 40s. I think that's his secret ambition, or perhaps not so secret. Whether Bayern will agree to that is another matter. They have given him a 1-year deal, but it's just 1 year. And I think that is a bit of a reflection of them hedging their bets. You know, you don't know what the situation would be like. He has been decent, but not quite the Manuel Neuer that we have all come to admire. His shot percentage save is way down, and he doesn't seem to have too many moments where opposition strikers get scared and start panicking because Manuel Neuer is in goal. I think he's more mortal now, which is understandable. But I think the bigger thinking here is, and Urbik plays into this, Bayern, I think, are not ready to really address this big issue properly. You know, they know that finding somebody with big enough feet to step into Manuel Neuer's shoes is going to be so difficult that with all the problems that they have with the other squad parts being rearranged in the summer, I think they just wanted to give themselves a bit more time to sort that out and said, you know what, Manuel Neuer is still good enough. Give him another year. That helps us deal with what happens with Kimmich, what happens with Musiala, what happens with Gnabry, what happens with Sané. There's so many things to solve for Bayern that I think making an easy sort of check in the Manuel Neuer box was the obvious thing to do for them.
Rafa, that's Bayern covered. Let's talk about the other side involved in the title race, Bayer Leverkusen. They've also been active. They've had Emi Buendia, Mario Hermoso coming in. What do you think those players do to the title race?
I think it's an excellent transfer for Leverkusen. They are low-key, I think, probably the best team in the last 2 or 3 years when it comes to getting players in that immediately make an impact. They needed a bit of depth. I think they know that with the Champions League still being very active for them, and of course they are the favourites to win the German Cup again, they looked a little bit short at the beginning of the season in terms of energy, in terms of hunger. And just by freshening things up and by giving themselves a few more options, I think they have just made the squad just a little bit better. Of course, there's no guarantee that these guys will be immediate improvements. They have to get used to the way that Xabi Alonso plays, which isn't that easy. You know, there's lots of short passing in small spaces. It's not for everyone. The adjustment might take some time, but I think they smell blood, you know, they smell the opportunity, I think, to do what they did last season. Of course, not going unbeaten, but at least to add maybe just 1 or 2 more trophies. And I think those transfers are done with a view to that, but they're also players, I think, that can help them going forward.
Let me ask you about Borussia Dortmund. Chukwuemeka's obviously come through the door as well. Svensson's come through the door. Goalkeeper from Ajax has come through the door. I mean, Niko Kovac, you probably know him incredibly well. I mean, he's a very good coach. He has at some point in his career been harshly treated by certain clubs, not going to mention which ones. But this is a big opportunity for him at Borussia Dortmund. And if he can get them anywhere near the Champions League, which is not too far away, then he's done a very good job at Dortmund to get them there. But how do you think this plays out? And are these good moves for Borussia Dortmund to end this season?
Well, let's separate these two things. I think in the transfer market, Dortmund needed to strengthen. The squad was too thin. You have a real battle on your hands for making the top 4. I think it's going to be very, very difficult, even with Niko Kovac there. And of course, they have the Club World Cup coming up, which is a big deal for them. And I think with the existing squad, it was just too thin. So to get players in now, I think makes a lot of sense. Certainly on the left, they needed somebody like Svensson. And they wanted, of course, Ryan Cherki as well from Lyon. That fell through. They need a bit more creativity, a bit more spark in this team, and Chukwuemeka is a player that they looked at even before they brought in Bellingham. It was between him and Bellingham at the time. Now they've come back to him because Bellingham has of course moved on. I'm still a little bit skeptical, I have to say, about the whole Niko Kovac setup. I think he's defensively a very strong coach, but he doesn't tend to do so well with players that are a bit more creative, that you know, don't want to just sit and play for the break. And I'm not sure you can actually play that way if you're Dortmund, because the opposition team are just going to say, fine, you know, you don't want the ball, we don't want it either. So break us down. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. I think he's going to bring, of course, energy and discipline and organization, maybe a few things that Dortmund were missing. But whether he is really the sort of the solution for Dortmund's many problems, and a lot of them were managerial problems over the last 10 years since Klopp has moved on, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how he gets on. Rafa, thanks so much for joining us. Great insight as always.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Ian, I wanted to mention also your club, St. Pauli. They've been pretty busy in the transfer window this January. Do you think they've signed the kind of players they need to perhaps avoid relegation?
Listen, the one that really stands out to me is obviously someone I know very well in James Sands, who's come in and pretty much gone straight into that starting lineup. He's been very good in that defensive midfield role, which was the big gap for St. Pauli. So for me, yes, they've addressed that situation. They're a very dangerous team. They've now gone 3 games back-to-back without defeat. They've won 2 of them. They're finally starting to play better at home, which is where they needed to improve, because they went into that winter break where they just didn't play well at home, which normally it's a fortress for a team that's newly promoted. You've got to rely on your home games. They've been better on the road in the first part of the season. In the second part of the season, if they can start to match that, then I think they get themselves away from danger. So I think St. Pauli's done a very good job. I'm very happy for James Sands for him to make that type of a move. It's initially on a loan move, which I will miss him at NYCFC, and Major League Soccer will miss him. But this is a big opportunity for him, a massive club now that's playing very good football in the Bundesliga under a very good manager who can maybe help him develop his game and become a better player. So all signs are pointing to them being safe this year.